Emergency alert. If you hear knocking from inside the walls, leave immediately. It started with a sound so mundane, so easily dismissed that it barely registered against the late-night quiet of the old house. A faint rhythmic tapping. Tap, 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 like a branch brushing against the siding in the wind, except there was no wind tonight. The air outside hung thick and still, typical for an August night in Cedar Creek. I was in the den, trying to unwind after a brutal week, the flickering blue light of the muted TV washing over me. Sarah was already asleep upstairs. The house settled around me with its usual groans and sighs, but this sound was different. It seemed to come from inside the wall behind the bookshelf. Tap, 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 tap. Probably just the old pipes contracting, I told myself, taking a long drag from my beer. This house, charming as it was, always made noises. Rats in the walls? Unlikely. We'd had the exterminator out last spring. I ignored it, turned the TV volume up slightly. But a few minutes later, I heard it again. Tap, 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 tap. Same rhythm. Same wall. A little louder this time. Or was I just listening for it now? Annoyance prickled. I muted the TV completely. Silence. Then, tap, 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 tap. It was definitely inside the wall. Drywall, maybe studs behind it. I got up, walked over, pressed my ear against the cool plaster. Nothing. The sound stopped the moment I got close. Weird. I tapped back experimentally. Knock. Knock, knock. Knock. Silence answered me. Shrugging, I went back to the sofa. Probably just the house settling in a weirdly rhythmic way. If only I'd trusted that first flicker of unease, that instinct that screamed wrongness. If only I'd dragged Sarah out of bed right then, driven away from Cedar Creek, not stopping until the sun came up over somewhere else entirely. But I didn't. I finished my beer, turned off the TV, and headed upstairs, the memory of the tapping already fading, dismissed as trivial. The house was quiet as I climbed the stairs. Too quiet? Maybe. The air felt heavy, stagnant. In our bedroom, Sarah slept peacefully, her breathing a soft, reassuring rhythm in the darkness. I checked the baby monitor on the nightstand. Our son, Leo, just 6 months old, was a quiet lump in his crib down the hall, the monitor's little green light a steady beacon. Everything seemed normal. I slid into bed, pulling the covers up, the familiar comfort of home settling around me. Sleep came quickly. It was later, much later, judging by the profound darkness outside the window, when the sound jolted me awake. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. Faster this time. More insistent. And not just from the den wall downstairs. It was coming from the wall behind our headboard. Inside it, my heart leaped into my throat. Sarah stirred beside me. What's that noise? She mumbled drowsily. I don't know. I whispered back, straining my ears. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. It was a frantic, almost desperate rhythm. Then, another sound joined it. From the opposite wall, a slower, heavier beat. Thud, thud, thud. Like something large and solid bumping against the studs from within. My skin crawled. This wasn't pipes. This wasn't the house settling. Sarah sat bolt upright, fully awake now, clutching my arm. Mark, what is that? Panic tightened her voice. Before I could answer, Leo started crying on the baby monitor, not his usual fussy cry. A terrified, shrieking wail that tore through the unnatural quiet between the knocking sounds. The monitor crackled loudly with static, Leo's cries cutting in and out. Then, through the static, another sound emerged from the small speaker, faint but undeniable. Tap, 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 coming from inside Leo's room, near the crib. Stay here. I hissed at Sarah, grabbing the heavy metal flashlight I kept in the nightstand drawer. I flung the bedroom door open and ran down the hall. The knocking seemed to follow me, echoing from the walls on either side, a horrifying, disorienting surround sound. I burst into Leo's room. The air was ice cold, stagnant. Leo was screaming in his crib, tears streaming down his face, tiny hands flailing. The tapping was louder here. Tap, 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 coming from the wall directly behind his crib. Frantic, insistent. I scooped Leo into my arms, holding him tight against my chest. He clung to me, his small body trembling, his cries slowly subsiding into terrified whimpers. The tapping didn't stop. It felt aware, like it knew we were there, like it was directed at us. I backed out of the room slowly, flashlight beams sweeping the walls nervously. Back in our bedroom, I handed Leo to Sarah, who held him close, rocking him gently. "What is it?" she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I said, my voice shaking. "It's inside the walls. All of them." The knocking continued, a hellish symphony from multiple points in the house now. Fast tapping, slow thudding, even a strange, wet scraping sound from somewhere downstairs. It felt like the house itself was infested, possessed by unseen, burrowing things. Then my phone, lying on the nightstand, lit up, not with a call. The screen displayed the emergency alert system banner, stark white against black. The text was glitchy, flickering, parts dissolving into static. "NC alert, Cedar Creek, anomalous auditory event," knocking reported. "Inside structures. If you hear knocking from inside walls, immediately. Repeat, evacuate. Oh, not delay. Objects may attempt. OIC mimicry. Oh, not respond. All integrity compromised. Immediate." The message cut out, the screen going black. Dead. Utterly dead. My stomach plummeted. Leave immediately. It wasn't just our house. It was happening all over town. And the warning was chillingly specific. Wall integrity compromised. Objects may attempt voice mimicry. Objects? Not rats. Not pipes. Objects. Sarah stared at me, reading the terror on my face. What did it say? "We have to go," I said, grabbing clothes blindly from the drawer. "Now." The alert said leave immediately if you hear knocking. "Go where?" she cried, clutching Leo tighter as a loud thud reverberated from the wall behind her. "Anywhere, away from the house, away from the town." I fumbled with my jeans, my fingers clumsy with panic. We needed shoes, keys, wallets, but the overwhelming urge was just to flee, right now, as we were. The knocking intensified, faster, louder, seeming to converge on our bedroom. Tap, 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 tap. Thud, thud, thud. It felt like the walls themselves were about to burst inward. Suddenly, all the lights in the house went out, simultaneously, plunging us into absolute darkness, broken only by the weak beam of my flashlight. Outside, the streetlights vanished. A collective gasp seemed to rise from the neighborhood, quickly swallowed by the cacophony of knocking that now seemed to echo from every house on the block. Cedar Creek was dark. Cedar Creek was knocking, and we were trapped inside it. "The car," I choked out, grabbed the diaper bag. "Go." We stumbled out of the bedroom, Leo whimpering again. The knocking was deafening now, a physical pressure against my eardrums, coming from the floor below, the ceiling above, the walls all around. It felt like being inside a drum being beaten by a legion of mad drummers. Downstairs, the front door seemed miles away. The air was thick, cold, vibrating with the relentless rhythm. We reached the entryway, fumbled with the locks. The knocking here, by the front door, was different, slower, deliberate. Knock, 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 coming from inside the thick oak door itself, as if something was embedded within the wood, patiently trying to get out, or in. I yanked the door open. The porch was empty. The street beyond was plunged in darkness, but the knocking sound spilled out from our house and echoed back from the houses opposite, a terrifying call and response. We scrambled out onto the lawn, shoes crunching on the damp grass, ran toward the driveway where my car sat parked. Keys. Where were the keys? I slapped my pockets frantically. Not there. Must have left them on the kitchen counter. "Stay here," I yelled to Sarah over the din, turning back toward the house. "Lock the car doors when you get there." I sprinted back, the open front door a dark moth vomiting sound. Burst into the kitchen. The knocking here was frantic, seeming to come from inside the cabinets, the countertops, the very air. Flashlight beams swept across the counter. There, keys glinting metallically. Grabbed them, turned to run. and froze. Standing in the doorway to the den, partially obscured by shadow, was a figure, tall, unnaturally thin, limbs seeming slightly too long, bent at odd angles. Its head was tilted, listening intently to the cacophony within the walls. It hadn't been there a second ago. It hadn't made a sound entering. It just appeared. As I watched, paralyzed by terror, it slowly raised one long, multi-jointed finger and tapped against the doorframe. Tap, 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 in perfect sync with the sound from the den wall. Then it turned its head towards me, slowly, mechanically. I couldn't see its face clearly in the shadows, just the impression of sunken sockets, a too wide mouth, but I felt its gaze, cold, alien, intelligent. It took a step towards me, its movement jerky, accompanied by a faint clicking sound, like chitinous limbs scraping together. I broke free from the paralysis, adrenaline surging, turned, bolted out the front door, not daring to look back, slammed the door shut, hoping futilely it might slow it down, reached the car. Sarah had Leo strapped into his car seat, was fumbling with the driver's side lock. "Get in," I yelled, unlocking it remotely with a fob. We piled in, slammed the doors, locked them. I jammed the key into the ignition, twisted. The engine turned over, roared to life, the headlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. The sound of the engine seemed to momentarily disrupt the knocking from the nearest houses, creating a small bubble of relative quiet. I slammed the car into reverse, tires squealing on the pavement, backed out the driveway, swung the car around, pointed it down the street, away from our infested home, glanced in the rearview mirror. The front door of our house was open again, and standing in the doorway, bathed in the red glow of my taillights, was a tall, thin figure. It just stood there, watching us leave. We sped down the dark street. Houses on either side pulsed with faint, internal light, synchronized with the knocking, windows rattling in their frames. Figures moved jerkily behind curtains. Occasionally, a door would open, and someone would stumble out, eyes blank, heading toward a neighboring house where the knocking seemed particularly loud, drawn like puppets on strings. They were being called, or summoned. This wasn't just an infestation. It was a conversion. We reached the main road leading out of town. Empty, dark, no other cars fleeing. Were we the only ones who understood? The only ones who got the alert? Or the only ones who listened? The knocking faded behind us as we put distance between ourselves and the residential area. But the silence ahead felt just as menacing. The town was cut off. The alert had implied. Would the road be blocked? As we neared the old bridge that marked the edge of Cedar Creek, my headlights picked something up, a figure standing in the middle of the road, blocking our path. I slowed down, heart pounding. It looked like Mrs. Henderson, old woman, lived next door to us for years, died last winter. But here she was, standing rigid, arms at her sides, bathed in the headlight glare. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the light with that faint, sickly luminescence I was starting to recognize. Her mouth opened and a sound came out. Not words, just a rapid, frantic tapping noise, like teeth chattering at impossible speed. Voice mimicry. The alert warned about it. Except this wasn't mimicry. It was translation, the knocking given voice. "Don't stop," Sarah breathed, her voice tight with terror. I swerved hard, tires screeching, aimed for the shoulder, trying to get around her. The Henderson thing didn't move to intercept. It just turned its head, unnaturally slowly, tracking our movement, the tapping sound from its mouth never ceasing. We shot past it, back onto the road, accelerating hard, leaving the borders of Cedar Creek behind us. The air in the car felt thick with fear, unspoken questions. Leo had fallen into an exhausted, uneasy sleep in the back. Sarah stared straight ahead, her knuckles white where she gripped the dashboard. "What was that, Mark?" she finally whispered. "What's happening?" "I don't know," I admitted, my voice raw. Something gets in the walls. The knocking, it changes people, or calls them, or replaces them. The less I knew, the more terrifying the possibilities seemed. We drove for maybe 15 minutes in tense silence, The road utterly deserted. No other cars, no signs of life. Just a dark, empty highway stretching ahead. Were we truly out? Had we escaped? Then my phone, still dead in my pocket, vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times. The same pattern as before. Seen. But we were miles from Cedar Creek now. Miles from the knocking. How? I looked around wildly. Empty fields on either side. Dark woods beyond. Nothing. Sarah saw the look on my face. What is it? My phone had pulsed again. Her eyes widened. She checked hers. Dead. Useless. Then she gasped, pointing at the car's dashboard display. The digital clock, which had been showing the correct time since we started the car, was now flashing. Midnight, pulsing faintly, and the radio, which was off, emitted a single soft click, followed by another. Click, 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 coming from inside the dashboard, inside the car's electronics. It wasn't just the houses. It wasn't just Cedar Creek. The signal, the knocking, the objects, they traveled electronically, or they were already everywhere, just waiting for activation. Panic surged, hot and suffocating. We weren't safe. We hadn't escaped. We were just carrying it with us. Pull over, Sarah screamed. Get out. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt on the gravel shoulder. We threw the doors open, scrambled out, dragging and now waking, crying Leo with us. Stood by the side of the dark highway, staring at the car as the clicking from the dashboard grew louder, more insistent. Click, click, click. Click, click, click. The headlights flickered, pulsing faintly green and violet. We have to run, I said, grabbing Sarah's hand, pulling Leo's carrier awkwardly into the woods. Get away from the car, away from anything electronic. We plunged into dense woods bordering the highway, branches scratching at our faces, unseen roots tripping us. Behind us, the car's horn started blaring erratically, a discordant, terrifying alarm in the night. We pushed deeper, stumbling through the darkness, guided only by the weak flashlight beam, leaving the possessed car behind. The woods felt vast, ancient, silent. But was it true silence? Or just the absence of the knocking we could hear? How deep did this infestation go? We found a small clearing, collapsed onto the damp earth, exhausted, terrified. Leo cried fitfully. Sarah held him, whispering reassurances she clearly didn't feel. I shone the flashlight around nervously. Tall trees loomed over us like skeletal fingers. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sounded like an approaching threat. Then I heard it, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Tap, 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 coming from deep within the woods. From the trunk of an old oak? From beneath the earth? Or from inside my own skull? I didn't know, couldn't be sure. Sarah heard it too, her head snapped up, eyes wide with fresh terror. The sound was joined by another, from a different direction. Thud, thud, thud. It was everywhere, even out here. No escape. We were huddled there, paralyzed by despair, when we saw the light, faint, flickering, through the trees. A campfire? Or something else? Hope, however irrational, surged. Someone else? Survivors? We stumbled towards a light, pushing through undergrowth, broke through into another clearing. There was a small makeshift campsite. A low fire burned fitfully, casting dancing shadows. And sitting around it were 3 people. A man, a woman, and a teenage boy. They looked haggard, clothes torn, faces smudged with dirt. Survivors. Relief washed over me, so strong I almost collapsed. Hello, I called out, stepping into the firelight. They looked up, startled, their eyes in the flickering firelight. It was hard to tell, but they didn't seem to have that sickly glow. They looked normal, fearful, exhausted, but normal. Who are you? The man asked, getting slowly to his feet, holding a heavy branch like a club. We came from Cedar Creek. I stammered. The knocking, the alert, recognition dawned in their eyes. Fear mixed with a strange sort of camaraderie. You heard it too? The woman asked, her voice trembling. The knocking in the walls? Yes, Sarah choked out, stepping forward with Leo. It started tonight. We ran. They lowered their guard slightly. Introduced themselves, David, Maria, and their son, Liam. They'd fled their farmhouse on the outskirts of Cedar Creek when the knocking started there, just before sundown. Their power had gone out hours earlier. They hadn't received any alert. We thought it was just our place, David said, shaking his head. Something burrowing. We heard things, voices, whispering from the plaster. Did you see anyone changed? I asked cautiously. David and Maria exchanged uneasy glances. Old man Hemlock, down the road. Liam, the teenager, spoke up, his voice cracking. We saw him standing by our fence, just watching. His eyes were weird, glowing. So it wasn't just a night. It started earlier on the outskirts, spreading inwards. We shared stories, fragment of rules overheard or deduced. The knocking, the 3 flashes meaning compromised houses. They'd seen Hemlock's lights flash. The voice mimicry, leaving immediately. They hadn't encountered the thin, clicking figures, nor the echoes of the dead like Henderson or my father. Maybe there were different strains, different phases. The more we learned, the more horrifyingly complex and widespread it seemed. Maria offered us some water from a canteen, some trail mix. We hesitated, remembering the rule about toxic sustenance from the radio intercept mentioned in other accounts. But this felt different. They seemed human, desperate like us. We risked it, taking small sips of water, chewing the dry mix. It tasted like salvation. As we sat there, sharing warmth and fear, the knocking sounds from the surrounding woods seemed to fade slightly, or maybe we were just getting used to them. A fragile sense of hope began to build. Maybe together we could survive. Maybe we could find a way out, truly out. David mentioned a ranger station deep in the woods, marked on an old map he had. Maybe it had a working radio. Maybe someone outside knew what was happening. It was a thin hope, but better than nothing. We decided to rest for an hour, then move out at first light. Exhaustion claimed us quickly. Sarah dozed fitfully. Leo finally quiet in her arms. David and Maria took turns keeping watch. I drifted into an uneasy sleep, plagued by dreams of knocking walls and glowing eyes. I woke with a start. The fire had burned low. David was on watch, staring intently into darkness. Silence. The knocking had stopped. Completely. What is it? I whispered. Sitting up, David turned, his face pale in the dying firelight. It stopped, he breathed. Maybe it's over? A twig snapped nearby. We both froze. Listened. Silence. Then a soft sound. Rhythmic. Coming from Maria and Liam, huddled together asleep under a thin blanket. Tap, tap, tap. Not loud. Incredibly soft. Coming from their chests. Like their hearts were beating in that dreadful rhythm. David heard it too. His eyes widened in horror. He looked down at his own chest, then back at me. Sheer terror etched on his face. Before I could react, Maria's eyes snapped open. They glowed faintly green in the gloom. Liam stirred beside her, his eyes opening too, reflecting the same sickly light. They sat up, slowly, mechanically. Their movements were wrong. Too smooth, too deliberate. They turned their heads in perfect sync towards David, opened their mouths, and emitted a chorus of soft, rapid clicks. David scrambled backwards, away from his wife and son, pure animal terror on his face. No, he whimpered. They got to their feet, gliding towards him, fingers twitching, clicking sound intensifying. David tripped, fell backwards. They loomed over him. I couldn't move, frozen by horror. Sarah woke beside me, stifling a scream as she saw Maria and Liam, saw their glowing eyes, heard the clicking. She grabbed Leo, instinctively shielding him. The Maria thing and the Liam thing paused, their heads snapping towards us, their blank, luminescent eyes fixed on us. They hadn't needed the knocking in the walls. It had gotten inside them, incubated, activated by the silence, or maybe the food. The water wasn't safe after all. Rule. Sustenance offered by them is toxic. Had David and his family already been compromised when they offered it? Had we doomed ourselves by accepting? David used their momentary distraction. He lunged sideways, grabbed a burning branch from the fire, and swung it wildly at the figures advancing on him. The Maria thing recoiled slightly from the flame, emitting a high-pitched static screech. The Liam thing, however, didn't even flinch as a firebrand struck its arm, just continued its smooth, gliding advance. Another choice. Help David? Fight these things? Or run, again, while they were distracted? David screamed as the Liam thing reached him, its long fingers closing around his throat. Maria screeched again, turning back towards the struggle. Run. I screamed at Sarah, grabbing her arm, pulling her up. We plunged back into the woods, leaving the horrific tableau behind us. David's choked gurgles quickly fading. We ran blindly, stumbling, falling, driven by pure terror. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of gray. We burst out of the woods onto another deserted road, miles from where we'd left the car. Exhausted, hopeless, we collapsed onto the asphalt. Was anywhere safe? Was anyone truly human? Then I heard it, a faint tapping, coming from Leo's baby carrier. Sarah heard it too. We looked down.